Electrocast.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
This week on the Deep Leadership Podcast.
Yeah, maybe I can't go to the gym, but I can still do some type of workout at home. I could still go for a walk. I can lift my, backpack, whatever it is. And so a lot of people they thrived off of that. We're like, that's my control. That is what I actually have control over. When the world is going mad around me, I can still do this. And for a lot of times, it just gives people this sense of ease.
Hi, and welcome to Deep Leadership. I'm your host, John Rennie. Well, I hope all is well with you today, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. The purpose of this podcast is to build a world with better bosses, and we do that by introducing you to the greatest minds working in the leadership space. Our goal is to provide you with practical information to help you along your leadership path, whether you're new to leadership or a seasoned pro. So thank you for listening in. It's an honor to be your host and leadership guide in this journey. Today's episode is brought to you by the Salty Sailor Coffee Company, Cadre of Men, and Pharaoh Skincare. You can find the links to all of my sponsors and all of my books in the show notes. Now, today we're going to be talking about fitness as a leader, and my guest is Nick Shaw, founder and CEO of RP Strength. Nick has coached Olympians, Navy SEALs, UFC and CrossFit champions, and world record holders. He is the author of Fit for Success, where he gives us 7 habits that we need to master to be successful. Now, I like talking about fitness and how being fit can help you along your leadership journey. I love this discussion. I know you will as well. So are you ready to dive in? Let's get started.
Welcome to Deep Leadership. Leadership is a people business. That's the philosophy of your podcast host, John Rennie. As a former Cold War submarine officer who spent 20 plus years leading businesses in corporate America before starting his own manufacturing business, he knows that leadership matters. Are you ready for some real-world actionable advice from John as well as his expert guests?
I'm ready.
The show starts right now.
Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Nick Shaw. Nick is the founder and CEO of RP Strength, a multi-million-dollar company that helps people achieve their health and fitness goals through evidence-based methods. Nick is an IFBB pro bodybuilder who bootstrapped his company from the ground up, rapidly turning it into a health tech brand with a lifetime revenue of over $100 million. He has coached Olympians, Navy SEALs, UFC and CrossFit champions, and world record holders. He's the author of Fit for Success, Lessons on Achievement and Leading Your Best Life. And I'm excited to have him on the show to learn from his leadership experience. So Nick, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
It is great to meet you. And, we were talking before we press record. You've had a lot of success. I want to congratulate you on your success, but I kind of wanted to hear your story. Tell us how you went from being a solo entrepreneur, one person, complete control of yourself, right, to a CEO managing a team of over 50 people. What was that like for you? What was your experience like?
Yeah, I'll give a little backstory of I always grew up really into sports, got into lifting at probably about the age of 13 or 14 and sort of was immediately hooked. And, through that in sports, knew I wanted to do something kind of sports/fitness related. So went to school at the University of Michigan to study sport management. And that's actually where I met who's now known as Dr. Mike, sort of the face of our YouTube channel. He was also attending Michigan. We met in the weight room. He convinced me to join the powerlifting club. And I was like, sure, that sounds up my alley. And did that. We started training together. He convinced me to come out to New York City after graduating college to be a personal trainer along with him. And that was really, I guess, what led RP to being formed. As we saw a bunch of stuff when we were personal trainers, we thought that maybe we had a good way to approach things that was maybe a little bit better/different than what other people were doing. And that really was the ultimate beginning of RP. And it's been really, really cool. Although I will say, one other thing you mentioned about solopreneur. So Mike and I were always partners of, he had a very good expertise of, he's got a PhD in sport physiology. So he was always the one to write books, write articles, create our digital products, all that. And, that was his strengths. And so my strengths were, not that, but just handling sort of everything else business related. And so it was always a perfect partnership of the things he was good at. Well, I was maybe not so good at, and vice versa. So when it comes to, answering emails, Mike might not be the best one to do that in a timely manner, but that's right up my alley. And so it just was always this great partnership. And that's that's how we got started. And then I guess just along the way, you get busy enough that you just have to bring on other people. And so we brought on other coaches to help, keep up with that. And then eventually, I brought my wife in, and just things were so busy, so crazy that we had to go out and get other people to help because we just couldn't keep our heads, above water, so to speak, because there was just so much stuff to do. And then we brought on other people. Things started to expand a little bit more on selling digital products, got into creating apps. And that's when we brought in our third partner. His name's Andrew, and he sort of led the charge on the tech component of everything for us. And so, again, like his area of expertise is just so different than Mike and I. It's always been this, great, play to people's strengths, more or less, is probably the best way to say it. And so it's just always been really, really solid for us.
So one of the things when you start hiring people, then you add a complexity of the fact that you have to manage people. So
Yeah.
what was that like in the beginning when you went from, maybe the two of you who are pretty well, you spent time in the gym together, you had a relationship with each other, you sort of, you had complementary skill sets. You bring a third partner, again, complementary skill sets. But now you have all these other people like trainers. I mean, you mentioned having your wife in the business, which adds a whole nother element to being an entrepreneur when you have your family involved with the business. So what was it like when you found yourself now in a leadership role versus just, you and a couple of buddies kind of doing things? How did things change for you when you had to start leading people?
Yeah, lots of changes. I feel like I could maybe now slightly equipped to answer that, like 7, 8 years into bringing on a bunch of other people. The biggest thing is when you first start hiring people, it's not so clear that, because you're so involved, like it's your baby, more or less, your business. You start from day one. You just don't think that anyone can possibly care or, do as well as you can because obviously, you're so invested into it. But, there's just probably a lot to learn from that where you have to be able to let go a little bit and sort of take areas that you can properly leverage. So like for us, the big, when we first started hiring people, it was customer service and, I guess other coaches as well. But there's just was so much. And it was like, well, yeah, maybe someone won't be as fast where they'll, answer every single question within 10 minutes, let's say. But, now you can get someone else and maybe they're answering it within an hour. Is that an acceptable trade-off? Because then I can go spend my time elsewhere to help grow the business. It's the proverbial working on rather than in. So like that was a huge shift for me. It took a long time for me to sort of grasp that concept and be like, oh, this is what they mean by that. That was a big one. Now is sort of more like de facto CEO because we have enough people to actually sort of do that. It's the biggest challenge is really going from doing stuff and having your hands and kind of always involved in it to now like I actually do very little of that, but it's am I doing a good job of making sure that people can work together and making sure that's very clear like what the priorities, what the objectives are. That's been a really big struggle for me because like just growing up being involved in sports and fitness, like I like doing stuff.
Yeah.
And so to go to that more of like a managerial role, it's basically I had to convince myself that what I'm doing is, not necessarily, doing stuff like with my hands, typing all that, but more of just having conversations and making sure that, everyone's aligned on the same page, things like that. Does that kind of make sense?
It does, yeah. And I think it's the biggest struggle for a lot of entrepreneurs because you start, you do something like, I'm really good at making a pizza, so I'm going to open up a restaurant. Well, now I got to hire people to make the pizza. Maybe they don't make the pizza as good as you make it, right? Or, and you have to train them and then they don't show up for work one day. And then you're like, well, and so it is hard. And one of the things you said that's really important is
that if you want to grow, you have to let go. And that's a critical thing that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with, is they have a hard time letting go. So they're not working on the business, as you mentioned, they work in the business because that's where their comfort zone is, right? So to be able to make the shift to be, when you're managing a team of over 50 people, you have to let go. You have to let others do that. And I think one of the things too I find with entrepreneurs is that when we're working in the business every day, we don't take vacations. We don't take any time off. And so we burn out. And so that's a challenge. Did you find yourself ever in that situation where you felt like you were burning out, or you were going too hard? And that's when you said, hey, maybe I should let go of some of this?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, my wife and I were both working every day in the business. This is, circa 2015 through 16 and 17, something like that. And just like the amount of volume of customer service inquiries and just, people reaching out and staying on top of social media, all that stuff, it just was never ending. And you've got two small kids at the same time, and you're trying to like grow and scale a business, and, hopefully trying to stay reasonably healthy because we do run a fitness company. So
Right.
trying to fit in some time to work out ourselves. We worked every single day for like a couple of years straight. And there were no real vacations, or even if we did go somewhere, it's having your phone with you so you can answer stuff, taking your laptop with you if you are going somewhere. It was never ending. And so you actually did get to a point where it's like, man, I don't know how much longer we can keep doing this. Because I actually remember we had like a full-time nanny, so during the week, but we also had to have like a babysitter on the weekends because we're like, we need a couple hours to like sit down and work, or, run to the grocery store, like run to Costco or something like that, because it's just like, we can't keep up. We can't keep doing all this. And so that was really, after that happened for a while, and then the kids get sick and it's just like adds the stress, and you're like, oh my gosh, I just can't keep going. I can't keep doing this. That was when we were like, you know what, we gotta hire some people. And yeah, that'll be a little tricky, and we'll have to teach them, and we'll have to kind of step back from being on top of everything, every single second, minute, hour, to like, now we've got to train them so that they can go and do it. But it was really, really hard to let that go at first. And then it's not like an immediate reward, because you got to kind of get over the hump of getting them trained and all that. But then once they do kind of get trained, and then they start doing some stuff, and then you actually can like take a little bit of a breath. You're like, oh, that's kind of nice. Oh, that is okay, good. And then you're like, okay, well, I guess now we can maybe apply that to some other areas as well. But it is very, very hard to let go. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest challenges I see too. If you look back, on your growth and the things that you had to do in the beginning, what were some of the mistakes that you made that you learned from early on? What were some of those early mistakes that you went through?
Yeah, anything and everything. Yeah. Again, I would say, one of the mistakes, building off what we were just talking about, is sort of thinking or feeling like you have to do it all. And, it's kind of reasonably early on that some questions started popping up, is like, hey, have you ever considered, automating things or doing some like email marketing and all this? And I'm just like, I don't even know what they're talking about. And so I guess I at least had the opportunity to realize that, and then go basically just hire someone to come in and do that. And so it's just like, I don't have the expertise to do this. I need to go find someone else to bring in to do this. And so for us, it was a lot of like contractors early on rather than hiring people full time. And then of course, like if things worked out, bring them on maybe more and more full time. But like that was probably a big mistake early on. And then when you bring in people and then you let them sort of do what they're really good at, without, micromanaging and stuff like that. And then you see the rewards from that, it becomes very clear. So like, oh, okay, I need to do more of that. Oh, what are some other areas where I'm not very good at? Oh, okay, I'm going to go try to find, a consultant or something to bring in to do that. And so like, at least probably fairly early on, we had that, or I had that realization. So that was probably a big mistake that, didn't last for numerous years.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
This episode is brought to you by Cadre of Men. Leadership is a people business, and for men, real growth happens alongside those who challenge and inspire you. Cadre of Men is your force multiplier, helping you achieve more strength, deeper connections, and a stronger sense of purpose. I'm proud to call myself a member of this dynamic group. Cadre of Men is built for men who refuse to settle. With dedicated forums covering fitness, fatherhood, business, and more, we provide the tools and camaraderie to help you thrive. Our weekly Zoom calls dive into tough, real-world topics, often featuring expert guest speakers who will push you to sharpen your skills and mindset. Monthly meetups include intense hikes and hands-on building sessions where you forge bonds through shared challenges. From fitness and finance challenges to mastering public speaking, Cadre of Men delivers actionable curriculum in leadership, business, and personal growth. If you're ready to step up, push past your comfort zone, and lead by example, Cadre of Men is for you. Inside the Cadre, we grow together, lead together, and rise together. Visit cadreofmen.com to learn more and take the first step toward becoming your best self. This episode is brought to you by Pharaoh Skincare. I would have never imagined I'd be talking about skincare, but this stuff is truly amazing. Pharaoh is revolutionizing skincare by replacing harmful chemicals with natural ingredients sourced from regenerative farms. Now, weightlifting is tough on the hands, and Pharaoh's Epidermis is the best product I've ever used to get my callous hands back to normal and stay in the game. Now I use it every day. Pharaoh also works to reduce fine lines, wrinkles, and improve overall skin health. As Pharaoh CEO Charles Mayfield likes to say, a little Pharaoh goes a long way. Deep Leadership Podcast listeners can save 15% off all of their products by using the code DEEP at checkout. So check them out at pharaoh.life. That's FARROW.life. This episode is brought to you by the Salty Sailor Coffee Company, the official coffee of the Deep Leadership Podcast. Salty Sailor is a veteran-owned coffee brand on a mission to deliver premium, fresh roasted coffee while making a positive impact in the world. Their motto is drink coffee and do good, which reflects their commitment to making amazing coffee and actively supporting the military community. 10% of every order goes to the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society, an organization dedicated to helping sailors, Marines, and their families in times of need. All our listeners get 10% off every order of their amazing coffee by using the discount code DEEP at checkout. So check them out at saltysailorcoffee.com.
That makes sense. Yeah, sometimes we struggle to do things on our own when there's experts out there that can do it so much faster. And so I think and when you're trying to bootstrap it and money is a concern, it's like, do I try to do this myself and get a 20% solution, or pay somebody to do it and get 100% solution, but then it costs money. So it's always these trade-offs you have to deal with, right?
Totally, yes. Very valid point of worth calling out. Another mistake that I was going to mention as well was when you are like working in the business so much, the thing that I probably overlooked for, the first, 4 or 5 years, maybe even more than that, really wasn't until about 2018 or 19 when I started to have a little bit more free time. Just like investing in yourself and continuing education, or learning about leadership, for example, being able to listen to podcasts, audiobooks, read books, things like that. Like, just wasn't time for any of that. And then as I started getting into that, I was like, man, I really missed the boat for years, where like I probably could have avoided some of the mistakes that were being made.
Yeah.
So like that was a huge one. And luckily they had kind of realized that later on. It was like, wow, it's actually really cool, because then you can go read a bunch of books by a bunch of other people that they've made all these mistakes before. Oh, maybe I can avoid that.
Right, exactly. Yeah. That's great. When did you feel like, at what point did you feel like you were going to be very successful and this was going to be a successful company? Because I know a lot of times when you're doing something like this, it's tentative, right, at best. Is this something I'm going to be doing for a year or two until I have to go get a real job? Or is this something that can last a long time? At what point did you feel like, yeah, we're going to succeed? This is good. We're going to win.
Oh man, that's a really interesting question, because I feel like I find myself asking that same question now, where I'm like, oh man, like, is this something we can keep doing? So it's like, it just, the stakes kind of get raised a little bit, or you see some success and you're like, oh, like, can we keep this up, or can we maintain it? So I feel like there's some element of that where I'm always asking myself that. But because with what like we did and how we went about it through a lot of social media marketing, you really get a chance to interact with a lot of your customers, whether it's emails or social media messages, etc. And, you start to hear enough people reach out and be like, hey, you've changed my life. You guys are really doing something cool. You start to hear that a good number of times. You're like, I think we really got something here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, getting that encouragement along the way, not just from people in your own inner circles, trying to build you up, but like people that pay for your services and they really get a lot out of it and just kind of continually reinforcing that, not only to me, but to Mike and our entire staff, like that's really cool. And, we get a lot of that still to this day. And it's, we all have negativity bias where, sometimes the bad reviews really stick out to us. And so sometimes you can kind of overlook those positive ones. And so every now and again, it's nice to read through that and be like, yeah, like we really are doing something cool here and we really are helping a lot of people. So I would say it's still an ongoing thing, but that's when you start to hear that enough times, it's really cool. And you think, okay, we might have something good here.
That's neat. That's neat. Yeah, one of the things that leaders do, especially in a startup company, is you establish the culture. What's the culture like in your organization? Do you feel like you have kind of established that and you maintain it, or is it something that you and your partners have done? So what's the culture like? I'm curious.
Yeah, this is something where, again, I feel like just here recently in the last year or two, I maybe have a pretty good answer to that. But, if you were to ask me 5 years ago, I'd have been like, oh, yeah, we've got a fine culture. But I couldn't have really defined it.
Hmm.
A little bit. 'Cause we've always been remote, even before COVID. So, that's always been a big part of it. We generally have to hire self-starters because we are remote. We're not here to look over your shoulder. I would say that we generally hire people that are maybe a little bit more senior. And again, that probably ties into the self-starter. Don't need a lot of overhead in terms of managing people. Those are all big ones. But we're pretty relaxed, pretty easygoing. If you ever watch any of my colleagues' YouTube videos, Dr. Mike, you can kind of tell that has to be the culture and the vibe. Like he's always making jokes. And so, we try not to take ourselves too seriously, have a little bit of fun along the way. And, we being evidence-based, we're not here to sell people quick fixes, fads, or gimmicks. It's like, no, no, no. You got to bring the hard work, but we've got a really good plan in place that we know will get you there. It's been proven, hundreds of thousands of times now. That all kind of plays into the culture.
Yeah. Okay. Very interesting. So, yeah, I think that you're right. I think we don't think about culture until eventually you start recognizing it and you're saying, okay, that this is a good part, and we want to keep this. And then you might find areas where it's not you're going that you want to say, well, that's kind of that's happening, and I don't really like that. I probably
That's kind of how I really started to be like, well, that's not the culture that we want. Oh, okay. Well, now I can clearly see what we want it not to be. Let's kind of lean more into, getting away from that and the things that we really want to do. And even that, building off of that a little bit is just the idea where you kind of have a dissenting opinion. And there's many times where I'll freely admit, but guys, I actually don't know on this thing. Can you give me your input? Because here's what I think, but there's probably a good chance that I'll be wrong. So, hopefully, I can say that. I think that's what our culture is. Hopefully, if you were to interview some of our other employees or colleagues, they would also agree with that. But we try to do that where, it's not just my way or the highway. We actually do want people. And kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier of, when you hire in a consultant or someone, we've always thought we're bringing you in because we want your expertise. We're not going to bring you in to tell you what to do. It's you're kind of coming in to help tell us what to do.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I want to switch gears a little bit. You've got a book called Fit for Success. Tell us, who did you write this book for?
Yeah, so wrote it during the COVID year. So it ended up coming out before the end of that year. And I just knew that there was a lot of people struggling. Essentially everyone in the world, right? Everyone was impacted by COVID and things were really crazy. Seems wild that was literally 4 years ago now. The book came out in November of 2020. So really the book was just kind of for people that were struggling during COVID. And I know that's too broad because I didn't know enough about marketing then. So it was too broad. It wasn't, sort of specific enough. But it was really just knowing that people were going to have a lot of troubles going forward, especially after all that, even into 2021. And I thought that I had learned a good bit, most of it from just reading a bunch of other books and kind of distilling, what tends to make people more successful and less successful. Because you start to read enough books or listen to enough podcasts and a whole bunch of different areas, fitness, personal finances, business, leadership, psychology, etc., you start to, or at least I did, I started to notice some common themes that would overlap between all this. Oh, that's really interesting. Well, they said this, and let's say they're a sports person. Well, this person's a business person. They kind of said the same thing. Oh, that's really interesting. And so, that's really at the end of the day what the book was about. Because I like looking for patterns. I like, hey, who are successful people? What can I learn from them? And just kind of distilling that into something that's a pretty easy read. Like you could probably read my book in half a day or something like that. And just wanted to kind of give like an overview on what it takes to be successful.
You mentioned in the book there's 7 habits of success. What are some of those habits?
Yeah, it's cool to touch on maybe like the 2 or 3 that really resonate with me the most.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first one is internal locus of control. It's huge. It's the idea of, try to focus only on the things you actually have control over. So if you don't have control over something, like why are you really worrying and stressing about it too much? Because you can't really do anything about it. And if you do that, you tend to have more of like a victim mindset where you kind of downward spiral. Whereas on the flip side of that, you're like, okay, well, this happened. What can I do about it? Maybe it's nothing physically, maybe it's just mentally. It's how you think about it. And I just really like that because it tends to just give you a more positive outlook on things, which is positive mindset is another habit in there. And the people that have that internal locus of control and tend to have a bit more of a positive mindset just tend to take more action in general because they know that what they say, think, and do makes a difference in what they do. So there's not a victim. There's always something you can do. That's kind of something I tell myself every day. Like, doesn't really matter. There's always something I can do. Those are 2 big ones that stick out to me. Another one would just be, general like disciplined. Successful people tend to be pretty well disciplined. And to me, what discipline means is you tend to have a longer term time horizon in how you view things. You're not necessarily after the quick fix or, hey, I want to like get rich quick. It's like, well, I know that's probably not the way to do it. You're like, well, I want to be rich, 5-10 years from now, or, build my wealth, things like that. So yeah, I might want to go buy this like fancy TV or car now, but you know what? I'm actually going to save a little bit. And so you just tend to view things more of like, hey, what's going to be better for me in the future? What's that time horizon? And when you think in the span of years and decades instead of days and weeks and months, like most other people, you're probably going to be pretty successful or more successful.
Yeah, I really like that you stress that. I know, I've just because I was in the military, I think I'm a very disciplined person. I mean, I'm 4 a.m. every morning. I work out every day. I write every day. I read every day. And so, but when I meet a lot of people and I say, well, I'll be up. I get up at 4 a.m. every day. They're like, you get up at 4. Why do you get up at 4 a.m. every day? I'm like, well, that's my most creative time, right? That's the only time I have for myself. And I started doing it when my kids were young, right? And I wanted time for myself. But I also, when I got home from work, I wanted time with them, right? So the only time I could find for myself was 4 a.m. So I've been part of the 4 a.m. club for decades. But I think like you said, when you think of it the long term, whether it's your fitness, whether it's dieting, whether it's trying to make money or to build a business. Like I said, if the long term, if you're doing that, 1% improvement, year over year, you're going to be a lot further ahead than someone that's just, they try something for a while and then they give up on it, And I think that's something that people want the short term. And especially you're in the health and fitness industry, people are like, I want to get jacked in 2 weeks. And you're like, well, you're not going to get jacked in 2 weeks, right?
You're like, you want something that doesn't exist. It's the idea of consistency over perfection. So a lot of times they're like, yeah, I want to, get in shape, and they'll be like perfect for a couple weeks, but they realize, well, what they later realize, what I could have told them before they start is, all right, you want to be perfect. All right, cool. Don't worry so much about being perfect. 80, 90%. Give me that. But give me that for, the next 6 months, the next, 12 months, next couple years. Because a lot of times people start out perfect and it just takes so much out of them, right? It's just such an intense framework that, a couple weeks later, they just inevitably fall off. And then they're just like, well, I can't do that. No one can do that. And it's like, well, you're correct. No one can be, perfect all the time, but just consistency over perfection. And then another thing too, which you said the 1% better every day. So one of my favorite books is called The Slight Edge. And it's just the idea that you just, it's like you said, you read every day, you write every day, you do some type of workout every day. Like, if you look at any one day in particular, like there's nothing exceptional going on, right? It's nothing out of this world. But now you start to compound, you start to stack that day in and day out for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 3 years, 5 years, 10, 20 years, like you've been doing. Well, hey, now you've got some pretty cool stuff. And that's what people overlook, because a lot of times people lose sight of that. The first couple months, you can't really notice a difference. The first year, you might not even be able to notice a difference, right? And it's like you step back, you see that long-term view. Imagine investing $1 or $2 a day. Well, it's nothing in the short term. 3 years, 5 years from now, if you're hopefully investing even in like boring stuff, index funds, it's like, well, 3, 5 years later, like now you've got a lot here. And that's sort of that compound effect that builds off of the slight edge principle, which just is like, what are you doing day in and day out? And if you can hopefully have some good habits, you're going to be better off.
Yeah, that's such great advice. So such great advice. And it's for your business. It's for your personal relationships. It's for your health and fitness, all those things. It relates to every aspect of your life, is that having a disciplined approach is going to get you a lot further along. And maybe not in the short term, but in the long term, you're going to be a lot further along.
Yeah, and it's hard too. It's just hard. So why don't people do it? Well, because it's hard. It's definitely not easy and requires some patience. A lot of times people don't have patience, but if you want to be more successful, like there's a reason that successful people tend to share similar number of habits and things that they do.
Yeah, it's at work. They tease me a lot because I always bring my own lunch, right? And I'm typically have the same thing. It's a lean meat and rice and vegetables typically. And they're like, do you want? We're getting donuts. No, I'm good. We're gonna go out and get ice cream. I'm good. And they're like, why don't you ever do anything different? It's like, well, because I know I have to control this. This is something that I know I need to control what I eat. So I meal prep. I bring my meals and I get teased a bit, but it just works for me, right? And so I'll be healthier longer by doing this. So
absolutely. And again, you mentioned control. What's internal locus of control? So you know that you have control over that. It's funny, going back to COVID, as I remember this, is that, people would tend to go in two different ways. One, go completely off the rails. So, well, okay, that's maybe not the best. And then there's a lot of times where people are like, there's so much out of my control right now going on in the world and the universe, all that like, yeah, maybe I can't go to the gym, but I can still do some type of workout at home. I can still go for a walk. I can lift my, backpack, whatever it is. And so a lot of people they thrived off of that. We're like, that's my control. That is what I actually have control over. When the world is going mad around me, I can still do this. And for a lot of times, it just gives people this like sense of ease.
Yeah, exactly. So you're right. There was two responses, which is like people gained a lot of weight or they got fit, right? So it's interesting. Yeah, interesting how people react to things. So if you're like the people listening into the show, we've got leaders of all different stripes. Who's the ideal customer for RP Strength? So are you looking for people who are trying to compete, or is it people just trying to get fit? Are there people trying to either lose weight or they get in shape? Who's the ideal client for your business?
Is it okay to swear on your podcast?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Because I've thought a lot about this. And probably the best way to phrase it up, right, is like, who is our ideal, customer? We are the best in the world at getting people fucking jacked. So if you are someone that wants to get, leaner, more muscular, like you just want to get more jacked, you come check out RP. And the best spot to start is go check out our YouTube channel. It's all free. We've got so much free content on there. You won't even know what to do with yourself. Check that out. You're going to have some laughs. You're going to learn a bunch. And then, lo and behold, principle of reciprocity, you're going to be like, yeah, man, these guys are really good. Like, I want to kind of check them out. I want to support them. We've got the tools. Like we give you all the information for free. You don't ever need to buy any of our stuff. But if you want to make it a little bit easier on yourself and you want the sort of the exact blueprint laid out for you, then you come get our apps. And the apps are going to tell you exactly what to do. And all you have to do is execute the plan. So if you're someone that wants to get jacked and you want a plan to execute, which is me, I love to execute plans if I can, you're going to really like our stuff.
Yeah, I love that. And what's the benefit of having a plan versus trying to do it on your own?
Oh, well, imagine you just don't have to think. You don't have to invest any of like your willpower, your mental bandwidth into it. So when we talked about discipline earlier, the really interesting thing about really disciplined people is like you said, so you made some interesting comments I'd like to just touch on real quick. The people that are the most disciplined tend to have to use willpower the least because you mentioned meal prep. You take your meals with you. Well, if people are bringing in junk food, it's very easy to say no to that when you've got stuff that you already have planned. And if imagine you don't have that, and you're hungry, let's say, because you haven't eaten since early in the morning or whatever it is, right? Who knows what's going on, and then someone brings in that tempting food, and it's right there, and you could smell it, and it just smells so good. You're much more likely to say yes to it if you don't have, your plan, you don't have something there with you. So, I mean, that's just a huge turn. Imagine walking into the gym and you're like, oh, what am I doing today?
Yeah.
Oh, well, you can probably convince yourself of just about anything. Oh, I'm too tired. Maybe I'll just go home. Oh, I'll just sit in the sauna or I'll just sit here for a little bit. Well, if you have an app that's telling you exactly what you need to do, like there's no thinking about it. You just go in and like, oh, what is my app telling me that I need to do today? Oh, okay, cool. I'm going to bench press 135 for 10. That's the first set. Oh, for second set, I'm going to do 8. Oh, okay. Boom, boom, boom. You click a little checkbox and marks it off. You move on to the next thing. It's just the mental bandwidth that needs to be expended to make decisions is a finite thing. And a lot of people, it sort of ebbs and flows. And at the end of the day, you're less likely to make the good decisions and whatnot. So, having a plan just eliminates all that. It's like you just follow what's laid out for you. And for many, 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 many folks, it just simplifies everything for people.
I love it. I've had trainers. I've had 2 different trainers over the course of my time working out, and I can tell you, absolutely helps. Having a plan helps because it makes it really simple and easy. So I love them.
Yeah. And there's a little bit of accountability when you have to show up and, someone's there.
Absolutely.
You're like, I really don't want to go to the gym, but oh man, I'm paying John to be my trainer. Like, oh crap. Well, I'm going to go. I'm going to be there. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, when you put the money in, you're now committed. Like I've just paid that money to look, and so now you're committed. So versus, I think I'll just sleep in this morning. No, you're committed. I spent that money. I want to get the biggest bang for the buck.
And I tell you what, that is why our products are not on the cheap end. That is why we do not have free trials, because for the longest time we had free trials. If you need a free trial to get started on a fitness app, you're probably not for us. But if you're willing to spend $20 to $30 and invest in yourself, great. Come do it because you're going to like our stuff. It's like, yeah, if you need to dip your toe in the water, I don't know, go watch our free YouTube stuff. Go check that out. Tons of it is free. You can watch that till your heart's content. Get a little taste of it. It's all free. Then come make the commitment to yourself and to us and come hop in.
I love it. That's fantastic. Well, this has been a fantastic discussion. What final message would you like to leave with our listeners?
I would say the biggest takeaway for me is going back to that like slight edge idea. And there's nothing that you can do sort of monumentally in one day. But if you continually keep doing these little things day in and day out, and if you can have that longer term time horizon and have some patience and just know that all these little things that you're doing are going to pay off in the long run, if you can somehow convince yourself to stick to that, you're going to be so much better off, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, that, you probably just end up being a different person. And actually, one of my good friends from high school has kind of really started using our products, watching all of our YouTube stuff. And he texts me quite often. And the pictures are remarkable from where he was like a year and a half ago, from 270 pounds down to like 180 pounds now. He's a completely different person. By the way, he doesn't need any medications anymore. He doesn't, need all this stuff. And it's, people around him ask him like, what'd you do? And it's like, well, he just like kept doing these little things day in and day out. And he just kept following the plan. And lo and behold, you stick to it. And now he's kind of, I say obsessed. I mean, in a good way. But now he's hooked. And he's like, I just love this. He's like, I just can't imagine, not doing it. It's like, well, yeah. That's what happens when you completely change your life and you become a way fitter, sort of better version of yourself and don't need medications and probably extended your lifespan by like a decade or two. Yeah, just keep doing the little things.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And again, I can speak to it from myself that it works, and you just got to stick with it and develop those healthy habits, and you keep doing it. But I think having guidance along the way, again, leaders, you're listening in, right? Think about it. You're like an athlete, right? And so you have a really tough job to do. So hire coaches where you need them to be able to get yourself in the best shape of your life. You cannot lead people if you're not leading yourself first. And one way you lead yourself first is getting healthy and fit. And one way you could do that is by reaching out to Nick and his team there at RP Strength, because they could certainly help you out for sure. But this has been fantastic. And Nick, how can people find out more about your company, RP Strength?
Yeah, rpstrength.com is a great spot. From there, check out that. You can probably click through to our YouTube channel. Feel free to watch all the information that you want. Again, it's all free. Anything and everything fitness related on there. You're going to find nutrition, training, weight training specifically, with a focus on like hypertrophy training, which is kind of like bodybuilding style training. And check that out. If you want to check out our apps, if you go watch the YouTube channel, there's tons of links you can click through to all that. Check out the website, rpstrength.com. My own personal Instagram is at nick.shaw.rp, and that's probably the spot where I spend most of my time on Instagram.
Okay, very good. We're going to put links in the show notes for all of Nick's resources. Nick, I want to thank you for coming on the show, sharing your leadership journey, sharing what you're doing with your company. And again, congratulations on all your success so far.
Thank you so much. Honor to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that is it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.
Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all you do.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information and updates, please visit our website at www.deepleadershippodcast.com or johnsrennie.com. Until next time, take care.
For those of you who dream of a world where music and podcasts live together in perfect harmony, now for the first time, Electricast gives you a magical compilation, Pod Till You Drop, Volume 1, where we give you the best in tunes and the best in podcasts. Feast your ears and hear the culture. Available now wherever you listen to music.
Everyone has heard about the U.S. space program, but what is actually going on at NASA? Get the real story in 4 minutes or less with the NASA Daily Podcast from Electricast. Join astronauts and researchers as they conduct groundbreaking experiments, work on the International Space Station, and reach for the stars. NASA Daily, your cosmic update.
Electricast.